In the last video, I shared with you our visit to Jamestown Settlement, a living museum recreation of the first permanent English settlement in what is now the United States of America, Jamestown, which is located in the Williamsburg, Virginia area. In this video, we are traveling a mile down the road to visit the actual historic Jamestown site. It is an active excavation site, but you can visit it. The attraction is actually made up of two different sites. Half of the experience is Colonial National Park, run by the National Park Service. The other half is a site called Jamestown Rediscovering. It is the excavation site and the land on which the original Jamestown fort was built. You need to buy two separate tickets at the visitor center to see both halves of this attraction. Tickets to the National Park site are currently $15 per person, and tickets to the excavation site, which is run by a group called Preservation Virginia, is an additional $15. So that's $30 per person to see the whole historic attraction. Kids 15 and under get a steep discount. The Visitor Center includes a museum exhibit that covers much of the same ground as the Settlements Visitor Center that was in this channel's last video, as it discusses the land's original inhabitants, the English settlers sent to form the Jamestown colony by the Virginia Company, and later the enslaved people brought to these shores against their will. However, this exhibit does feature some unique finds from the excavation site for you to check out. Additionally, the Visitor Center features a 15-minute documentary film that airs every 30 minutes that will provide you with the background historical information that you may find helpful as you tour the grounds. Once you have checked out all the exhibits and the film, it's time to head outside.
You walk across a bridge and walk down a path and come face to face with the monument that was built in 1907 to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the founding of Jamestown, which took place in 1607, about 13 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. The most interesting parts of this experience for most guests are likely to be found on the Jamestown Rediscovery portion of the grounds. You will pretty quickly find some excavation work going on most days. As we walked up, the staff was just starting to dig in a new area that they hadn't yet searched. They were working a few yards behind the site's Pocahontas statue, which was dedicated in 1922. She, of course, is one of the best-known personalities in the story of Jamestown, as she was the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan tribes, was then kidnapped by the English settlers who were trying to use her to negotiate the release of several settlers who had been kidnapped by the Powhatan tribes after the relationship between the settlers and the tribes soured. And there was another open excavation site a short walk away from the new one they were just digging. They actually found what they believed to be an artifact while we were there and called visitors over to look at it. It was a piece of pottery that may date back to the colonial period. Of course, we don't know much about it for sure until archaeologists go through the process of dating the piece of pottery, but it was still cool that they found something that could end up being a historical artifact while we were there visiting the site. And it was fascinating to watch the field team at work. They usually are out working trying to uncover pieces of history Monday through Friday, weather permitting. This is a reconstructed blacksmith shop sitting atop the remains of the first forge in Jamestown. Nearby is a scale model of James Fort, both as it was built in a triangular shape in 1607 and also showing the outline of how the fort was expanded to a 5-wall fort in 1608. Being there in the middle of the historic fort area and being able to see the layout from overhead in this model really helps you to picture the entire area and how the space was used. As you walk out near the water's edge, you see the Captain John Smith statue, He was an important leader in the early days of the Jamestown settlement. He built relationships with the neighboring Powhatan. It didn't get off to a great start as, according to his journals, the tribe leaders were about to behead him when young Pocahontas threw herself on top of him to prevent it. Some historians believe he wasn't actually in danger and that it was likely a ceremony he didn't understand to accept him into the tribe, with Pocahontas playing a role in the ceremony that he thought was real, if it even happened at all. In any case, the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. has a depiction of that event, along with other scenes from the early history of the country. Due to coastal erosion, one corner of the original fort is now underwater in the James River. It began to be submerged in the river in the late 1600s. It was actually believed that all of the land that the entire fort sat on was now completely underwater, until archaeologists found that most of the actual site was still on dry land in 1994. A seawall has been built to prevent further erosion at the historic site. Out near the water, you can see a partial recreation of the barracks where many of the men would have lived. And coming up in a moment, we will see one of our favorite historic finds here. It is the exact spot of the first church that was built in Jamestown in 1608. They have rebuilt the foundations of the walls so you can see exactly where the church was. Archaeologists found the remains of this church and believe this 24 by 60 foot spot is where, in 1614, Pocahontas married English settler John Rolfe, who was the first settler to become a successful tobacco farmer, which would become an economically important export for Jamestown as it grew. There is some question, of course, as to whether Pocahontas made the decision to marry of her own free will. It's difficult to answer. Obviously, she had been kidnapped, but she also personally told her father that she wished to marry John Rolfe. Her father gave the marriage his blessing, and several of Pocahontas's family members attended the wedding in the Jamestown fort. The wedding would bring about a new era of peace between the Powhatan tribes and the English settlers. Pocahontas accompanied her husband on a trip to England about 3 years after they got married. She got sick on the way home and died, probably from smallpox or pneumonia, and the peace between the settlers and the tribes didn't live on much longer than she did.
There is another church to tour on the property. This is the Memorial Church, built on top of the foundations of the third church built in Jamestown. This tower at the front entrance to the church is the only above-ground surviving 17th century structure from Jamestown. You can see that there is separation from this historic bell tower and the Memorial Church built in 1907. This brick church is built around the foundations from the third church, and they went to great lengths to make that obvious. There are wooden frames in the back of the church showing where the historic walls would have been. And part of the floor is made of glass, so you can see down under the 1907 church floor to look at the foundations of the previous church. There are several early Jamestown residents buried either under the floor of the church or in the cemetery behind the building. As you tour the new church, there are TVs up front showing video from the excavation process of the church. Another historical building whose foundations were nearby is the historic State House. It was the meeting site of the Virginia Assembly from the 1660s until it was destroyed by fire in 1698. This is the oldest representative legislature in the Western Hemisphere. An Archaearium is built on top of that foundation. It is a museum displaying many of the artifacts found on the site of the Jamestown fort. Like the Memorial Church, this museum has glass in the floor so you can look down and see some more of the foundations of the State House underneath the new building. Unfortunately, this building, whose foundation you can walk over, was where the Virginia Assembly decided to officially, legally allow lifelong race-based slavery. The museum that sits on the grounds depicts what life was like in the early colony based on the artifacts found, including the story of the starving time, where they were without food in an especially difficult winter where settlers resorted to eating horses, dogs, rats, and even cannibalism. We were told we could take pictures and video of every room in the Archaearium except for the skeleton room, which did have some full skeletons that were excavated from the site. The building ends with a gift shop, but our tour wasn't done yet. We then took a stroll through Newtown on the National Park Service land. This area features ruins of buildings that were built here when Jamestown began to expand outside of the fort. We weren't really sure what we were looking at most of the time as we saw these ruins, but the biggest set of ruins are of the Ambler Mansion, which was built by the 1750s. There is so much history to explore here. We've tried to tell much of the Jamestown story in our last video and this one, but it was of course too much to fit into 2 YouTube videos. We definitely suggest checking out the Jamestown settlement in our previous video. That's the site kids will probably most enjoy exploring. But don't miss out on Jamestown Rediscovery here on the actual grounds of the original fort. Click the links at the end of this video to see our previous tour of Jamestown Settlement, as well as our tour of nearby Yorktown Battlefield. And be sure to subscribe and click the notification button so we can see you the next time we're traveling through history.